Yes, I know I'm really late talking about these characters that already came out from CN, and I'm trying my best to catch up to the latest news, but a couple months ago on the CN side, they recently did a collab with Shiny Force. I never heard of this, but going by the theme of how Langrisser likes to collab with, it's usually with older series. It does feature 3 characters, with one of them being a free SSR in the event. I'm actually really liking the design, but let's not waste any more time. The first character on the list is Sonia, and by the look of her design, we can already tell that she's a tank, and that's cause she is, by taking a look at her kit. She is part of the Glory, Princess, and Time faction. Her talent lets her reduce her damage taken when there are allies within 2 blocks of her, but if there are no allies near her, then it will be her damage dealt instead. When entering battle, she'll always attack first and is able to revive. Quite the standard stuff for tanks, some of them at least. Being able to attack first is always ridiculously good, so yeah, not bad. She has a 1C support skill that dispels 2 buffs on her and heals 30% of her own HP. But if she has less than 50% of her own health, then the healing effect is increased by 100% and gets reinforcement. That's really good. The only real tank that can actually heal is Isera as far as I'm aware of. This skill really does allow her to better perform self-sufficiently. She has a guard skill that lets her be immune to displacement effects as a passive, which is really nice. It adds 20% of her own attack to her defense and gains a command where allies within 2 blocks of her take 10% less damage battling against enemies outside of her command. That condition is a bit weird since it's only really affecting long-range attackers, and most likely it does take an effect against AoEs. Her 3C is a 2-parter. The first part reaches 7 blocks long to inflict duel on an enemy, where they can only target her for 2 turns that cannot be dispelled, but in regular content, it reduces their damage dealt. Afterwards, she buffs herself up that lasts for 2 turns and gains Lure, where if she battles the enemy with duel, she has a 100% chance of not being crit. Then afterwards, the skill changes to Electric Sword. This is the second part of her 3C, which is a AoE that can be used within 3 blocks to enemies within 25 blocks. Now before you guys think about anything, this is false. It should be 3 blocks if we take a look at her gameplay. Plus, like always, sometimes the translations on this website can be a bit abnormal. This does magic damage surprisingly and has a 50% chance to inflict 1 debuff, and if the enemy with duel was hit from this, she can move 2 blocks and act again, and buffs on her do not lose their turn duration. Then after this, it changes back into duel. The thing about Sonia is that she's a good mix from either being a pretty solid tank or a pretty solid attacker, if we take a look at the rest of her kits. Her having that heal skill, it is very good. It's especially even more ridiculous considering that she is also a tank. Her 3C is definitely interesting. With this, she is the very definition of a taunt tank, mainly specifically on one enemy, in PvP at least, where I see this annoying to deal with. The second part, I find it very weird. The range on it is pretty terrible, but the strangest part about it is that it does magic damage when she's supposed to be a physical attacker. Besides, she's not exactly going to be doing a whole lot when using it. The Act Again is the only one that's being more beneficial. And it doesn't seem like that she can tank very well since she doesn't have a lot of DR compared to other tanks. The only thing I can see that's plausible is if you're up against any long-range attackers. But if you are planning on just making her a full-on attacker, then that's also fine. Once she does come to global very soon, I'll go a lot more in depth about her. Usually with these type of videos, it's mostly me just talking about what CN got, and I like to wait until they come out very soon on the global side to be more very detailed about them, so that you guys can get a better understanding instead of me just saying the same thing in one video and in the other. Next up is Kirika. She is actually the better one in the whole collab. She's part of the Princess, Euless, and Time faction. Her talent increases her attack. If she has not attacked after ending her turn, her remaining mobility increases the range of her line skill for 2 turns. It cannot be dispelled and is stackable up to 8 times. Whenever she does stack those effects, the turn duration is refreshed at its max turn duration. Now, I don't know how annoying it's going to be to have her set up. I feel like it's going to be the same case with a lane where they need 1 turn to really get going every time. But once she does get those set up, she becomes very deadly. Combine that with the fact that she also has AoE skills to complement that. Her 1C is a active skill that teleports her to a specific block. I'm pretty sure it's within 2 blocks. Now this next part is wrong. What it should say is that after her turn, her and her allies within 2 blocks have their damage dealt increased by 10% for 1 turn, which is pretty nice. Her 2C has a passive where if she has 3 more stacks of her talent, her skill range increases by 1. It's an AoE that applies arrow rain, where if they don't move, they take fixed damage, and for every 1 block that they do move, the fixed damage amount is reduced. Very similar stuff with Auto Credo. Then her 3C, the passive on it, when targeted by a ranged attack, she has a 30% chance to take 20% less damage. It's a AoE line skill where if the enemy defense is higher than their magic defense, then it does magic damage instead. And it will deal a lot more to the closest enemy, but will deal less the further they are from what it is actually doing from watching gameplay and what it says on Wikigrisser. Enemies that are hit by this have their armor effect disabled, but in regular content, their defense is lowered as well as their mobility, all for 2 turns. If she is able to get going, I'm actually certain that her AoEs can hit across the map. The passive on the 3C could be a bit better. It's not the greatest thing, but I really like how this covers both defensive stats, meaning that she should be dealing the highest amount of damage possible, and with one of the highest multipliers that you'll ever see on a character, 0.6, whenever this skill hits the closest enemy. Now I'm not really sure if it has to be like depending on how far she actually is, or if it depends on if it hits one enemy first and then it leads on to the other. Her other 2 skills feel pretty generic. The 1C giving her a damage boost is always nice, you can't go wrong with that. The 2C will be definitely really annoying to deal with, especially if they're running something like Last Rites, Shrine Maiden, in order to get rid of that bonus effect. Last but not least is Excella, which should be the free SSR. She's part of the Empire Strategy and Time faction. When battling against enemies who have less HP than hers, her attack and defense increases. After taking action, she has a chance to gain charge. So the next time she attacks, her crit is increased by 100%. And if a skill was used with this effect on, then the cooldown is reduced by 2. Her 1C is a support skill that increases her attack, and when actively attacking, she has a 50% chance of not consuming charge that lasts for 4 turns. That actually doesn't sound terrible. I never would have expected that, especially it lasting that long. So yeah, this skill really helps her be more sufficient. So yeah, with this one, she doesn't really need to worry about having a faction buffer around her. Her 2C is an AoE that teleports enemies somewhere near the selected tile that applies a terrain effect called Gravitational Field. So if enemies end their turn within 2 blocks of this, they will end up being teleported around it. I feel like that they took Lifini's 3C and made it kinda better, in my opinion at least. The only thing that would have made it better is if it lowered their mobility. Lastly, her 3C. The passive on it, when she triggers her talent while having charge, she gets a buff that lets her heal 30% of her own HP before entering battle. This does deal magic damage, and melee soldiers will also attack with her. If the enemy is in range of Gravitational Field, at the end of the turn, the enemies will take a little bit of AoE damage. Not bad for a full-blown single target attacker. There are going to be some cases where you don't really have to run her AoEs. It's going to be more useful if you have to position lock the enemy, though it might be terrible at doing that since they are able to get away pretty easily. Besides from that, she's not terrible as a raw damage dealer, which you can get for free nonetheless. And I know I could have used Wikigrisser to get a better translation on these stuff, but usually with how these stuff goes, this is actually my first time looking at these kits. By the way, you should definitely check out Wikigrisser if you have the chance, if you guys do want to know all the latest news, equipment, and characters so far. But back to what I was saying, usually the way how I first discovered them is through a site for CN. So I didn't want the video to feel the same by me talking about what I'm kind of finding out compared to what I feel like I know, which is usually the everything to know type of vids. I would rather go more in depth in those type of videos than with this one, because this is just stuff that's going on in CN. So yeah, it does really suck that I'm far behind in these stuff, but I would rather keep the same style that I usually do. So yeah, I wanted to say that just because I feel like that some of you guys might point that out, like why I'm not referencing Wikigrisser when these characters have been out for a long while. So yeah, now you guys know. We good on that? Alright, cool. Hopefully at least. Alright, so the exclusive equipment. One of them is for Leo Beck. It increases his HP. And I know it's hard to understand here, but his soul contract skill cannot be dispelled. The cooldown of Hades Erosion is reduced after dealing damage to a max of 3 times. I'm not too sure what Hades Erosion is. I tried looking a bit more into that, but I couldn't figure out what exactly it's talking about. Other than that, the Undispellable Revive effect is really nice. The other exclusive is for my boy, Theon. This one gives him more HP. The next line right here should say that after he returns his spinner back to him, he gets a buff that lets him take 20% less damage. At the end of his turn, a spinner will spawn within 10 blocks away from the enemy, but in PvP, it will randomly spawn somewhere in the map. That kind of feels a bit weird, but depending on where it lands, if you're lucky enough to have it land like near the enemy, that can be really annoying, taking that little chip damage every time, and maybe even forcing them out of their position to avoid it. But it does give Theon more damage opportunity. I don't really like the randomness, but considering how Theon works, it's alright, mainly because he does get damage reduction to make up for it. The casting skills that came with the update is for Mariel. Increases her attack. If she kills with her 3C, she gets another skill, and I think she gets her 3C back. But if she doesn't kill, she stuns them. Second is Mew. Int increases and gives the tree spirit more stats and an extra skill. And what that skill does is that they can do a fixed amount of healing for allies within 2 blocks, and Mew skill range is increased. Third is King Red. More int, and when his blood crystal shield is activated, all of his skills are reduced by 3. That's really good. Then the last one is for Sumire. It should increase her attack and defense. Her Dragon Dance and Nirvana can't be dispelled and last an extra turn, which is also another great one, since those effects I think last for 1 turn, so her having this will definitely be helpful. If you still use her, that is. The new type of banner in this update is the wishlist one that only has characters from Langrisser 4 and 5. We can expect this banner to be a regular occurrence every month, just like with the other one. As for new content, of course, the farmable collab event story, a new building that's just for decoration, a login event, Prayer Arena, which is a PvP game mode where they give you characters you're forced to use and create a team with them. Then lastly, there is the Dimensional Expedition to look forward to. And if you're really into PvP, there will be a new map. For the new skins, so far the only one I could find for this collab is of course the Echo of Light for Sonia and Kirika. I can honestly see people going for this one. I myself will probably not, though it is very tempting, I'm not gonna lie. But they are very nice looking skins. Then a Machalado skin for Lost Dam, alongside with some other skins. Now this one is very cool. I'm actually really impressed with how they handled Excella, and they made her a pretty good damage dealer at that, who can hit really hard, especially since she has that crit increase if you're lucky enough. And the crazy part about it is that she's free. Kirika might be kinda tough to really get going. Might be tough, might not be that bad, who knows. But once she is set up, she's gonna be quite insane with her range. Sonia is the weirder one of the two. I think when it comes to tanking, specifically when she's being range attacked is where her defensive capabilities kinda lean towards more. But I feel like her overall tankiness is just not enough. I feel like she's supposed to be like the better version of Albedo, though I can see people say that, but I feel like both of them are good in their own way. Sonia can definitely tank against magic attacks much more better than Albedo due to like soldiers, but with Albedo, she is more worried about physical attackers. She really only has 1-2 soldiers that can perform well against magic attackers, but Sonia might be better dealing with that a lot more. To add more, Sonia is able to add parts of her own attack into her defense, which is not bad, but I feel like Albedo is still a lot better since she does have a lot more DR in her kit. The big positive about Sonia is that she's a lot more self-sufficient. She can perform even without needing a faction buffer and is able to heal herself. So with the lack of damage reduction that Sonia has, those qualities really makes up for it. Whereas with Albedo, she actually needs help. But yeah, crossovers are always exciting to look forward to. So I'm sure a lot of people will be summoning for them because who knows when they'll come back. We should be getting this collab in the global side somewhere around late July after major update number 57. If you guys enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more, and feel free to let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this crossover and everything else in it. There is still quite the amount of CN updates that I really want to cover. Eventually, I will get to each and every one of them because I am really far behind on it. Like, I really want to catch up on the latest news and everything that's coming out. But yeah, thanks for watching. Your fellow Z.